Israel says that it is now beginning a new stage in its war with Hamas. Israel's defense minister says that the plan calls for a scaled-down approach by troops in northern Gaza while continuing to fight militants in the south. Today, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken will arrive in Turkey. He is also expected to visit Israel and the West Bank in the coming days. His trip comes amid mounting fears the war in Gaza could erupt into a wider conflict across the region. CBS News correspondent Christina Ruffini is following the latest for us from the White House. Always great to see you, Christina. What is the objective? What is the purpose of Blinken's trip?
Well, this is his fourth trip since those attacks last year, and it's the same agenda almost every time. It just is an agenda that the U.S. is still trying to carry across the finish line, and that's find more ways to protect Palestinian civilians, try to bring this conflict to a resolution sooner rather than later, try to address what's going to happen on the day that Israel leaves Gaza, who's going to be governing that area. And this trip, he's actually added on another stop, which he's going to Turkey, and that has to do with this long-standing issue with Sweden and NATO, and Turkey being the objecting to Sweden joining NATO. So there's a whole other issue that they've taken their eye off slightly because of this conflict in the Middle East, but that's coming up in July. So he's going to visit Turkey and try to sort of smooth some of that over. But look, I mean, even in the statement they sent out yesterday, the State Department is being very transparent about how this trip is going to go, and it says we don't expect every conversation on this trip to be easy. There are obvious tough issues facing the region and difficult choices ahead. But this is another one of those marathon trips. He's going to be going to Turkey, Greece, Jordan, Qatar, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Israel, the West Bank, and Egypt all in one swing.
Yeah, that is a lot. So Blinken has visited, the region multiple times since the war between Israel and Hamas began. I guess a lot has happened, but it also feels like a lot has not happened. How will this trip be different, particularly when it comes to, America's messaging to the leaders that he meets, but also to the rest of the world?
I mean, it may not be that different. It may not have a different outcome, and I don't think they're billing it as they're going to. But one thing this administration is really keen on is face-to-face diplomacy. That's something we've seen with President Biden when he flew to Israel in the days after the attack, and that's something that we've seen with Secretary of State Blinken. He likes to go in person and talk to these leaders face-to-face. The biggest concern right now is a regional conflict. We're seeing Hezbollah in Lebanon starting to pick up. We're seeing more cross-border conflict between those areas and Israel's northern border. So there's a fear that this could spiral. Now, there's been a fear since the beginning, but with the recent bombing in Beirut, that taking out of a Hamas commander, not a Hezbollah commander, a Hamas commander in Beirut, those two groups are not the same, but they do overlap in their ideology sometimes, and they may feel like it's time that they need to get involved. And the fear is that that's going to happen. So the U.S. and diplomats and envoys have been crisscrossing the Middle East, trying to get all these different players who may have influence with these different groups to keep tensions not calm, because they certainly aren't, but at least at the status quo, so that hopefully the conflict that's going on can get resolved before it spills over into another. And, the potential to pull in so many different regional tensions, so many different conflicts in that area, it's not going to take that much. So it's another one of these trips where he's going to just try to keep it as is in the hope that it can be resolved at some point in the near future.
Okay. Christina, thank you very much.
Thank you.